Mikhail says Derby County are staying up. Well, if we were to do the maths on this one, Derby have picked up 22 points so far this season, meaning that they've averaged 1.04 points per game. With the 21 point deduction then taken into consideration, that leaves them on just 1 point at the moment, 20 points away from safety. If we then take their point tally from last season and use that as the requirements for survival once again, so that being 44 points, that would mean that with the point deduction taken into consideration, they would need to average 1.72 points per game between now and the end of the season, which is almost automatic promotion form, to go ahead and achieve 44 points once again. So I do rate the optimism. It is possible, just highly unlikely. Guys, welcome back to another video on the channel. If you were keeping your eye out on the community tab the other day, I asked you for some unpopular opinions about your championship club, and today we're going to be going over them all and I'm going to be giving my opinion on them as well. 300 likes will be appreciated on today's video, but without any further ado, let's jump into them. Nottingham Forest fan Jamie Allen is coming in with Worrell and McKenna are up there in at least the top 3 centre-back pairings in the league. Big statement there. Now I think the top 2 centre-back pairings in the league we're probably going to have to give to Tim Ream and Adarabioyo at Fulham, and then, you know, Kelly and Cahill at Bournemouth. After that though, things are up for debate in this regard. I actually think that I'm going to agree with this statement on a technicality that we don't really have many centre-back pairings in the league anymore, because the vast majority of championship sides now play with a system that have got 3 centre-halves in. So we've got a lot of trios at the back, but not a lot of pairings these days. You know, if we're thinking about some of the other good defensive sides in the championship, the likes of West Brom, Stoke, Millwall, they all play with the back 3 these days. And I know that Forest have played with the back 3 at times under Steve Cooper, but they play with the back 4 more times than they have a back 3. So because of that, I think I'm inclined to agree with this one. Although, to be fair to them, despite having a combined age of 75, Curtis Davis and Phil Jagielka are right up there this season in terms of centre-half pairings. Reece McGrath says Cardiff will win the playoffs. I mean, the championship in mid-table at the moment is incredibly congested, so any side that goes on the run at the moment absolutely flies up the league, but I mean, this would be quite the ambitious one. While I don't agree that they'll even make it to the playoffs this season, they have improved under Steve Morrison, and I think that's important to note. Since he's come in, Cardiff have picked up 1.42 points per game. If they were to average that for the rest of the season, they'd finish the year on 57 points, which would be a respectable mid-table finish considering where he picked them up from. Harry Plays says Bradshaw is a decent striker at this level, just very inconsistent, and I'd probably tend to agree with that. He seems to always be a very patchy striker, the sort of guy that'll score like 6 in 5 and then go his next 10 without scoring. I had a deeper dive into his championship stats, and he averages a goal at this level every 290 minutes, which is fairly sort of average for a championship striker. Sort of your 1 goal in every 3 sort of games sort of striker. Shadow Bullet says Pereiro is the best CM in the championship. I think that in terms of like natural ability and potential, he may end up getting up there, but for the time being, let's not be forgetting about this man. Shadow Bullet also coming in with saying that Marcus Tavernier is very overrated. He is an interesting player because on the eye, especially when I watched him last season, I thought he was really quite good actually. There's just always been one sticking point with Tavernier, and it's always been his end product. I remember saying at the start of the season that that's the one thing that if he properly nails down, I wouldn't, you know, put it past him going on to play in the Premier League. He's still only 22 now, so is at an age where he will continue to develop. But in terms of that final product, he's not really gone ahead and improved that this season. In fact, I saw a stat about Tavernier the other day. He's actually the least clinical player in the championship. Only 2% of his shots result in a goal, which is the lowest number of a conversion rate in the league at the moment. Ben Goodwin says, might be unpopular, but not sure because I don't look into other teams, but we Stoke are the unluckiest side when it comes to injuries to our key players. Interesting point. I do, to be fair, think that if we were to compile like a top 6 list over the last few years in terms of those key injuries, then Stoke would definitely be up there. A few other teams who I think have struggled with injuries over recent years in the championship. Reading always seem to have an injury crisis at points. Bristol City always seem to have loads of players out. I think my side Preston have been unlucky with injuries at times, particularly in the first couple of years under Alex Neil. But yeah, this season does seem to be a little bit of sort of history repeating itself. You know, last season Tyrese Campbell picking up an injury at a crucial point of the season. This time round it's happened to Harry Souttar. So yeah, Stoke can't really catch a break, can they? James Corden says a fully fit Stoke squad could easily get top 2. big call. Although I wouldn't say top 2, I certainly think that a fully fit Stoke squad over an entire season has a very good chance of being the best of the rest in that 3rd place. I still put, you know, Fulham and Bournemouth a step ahead of anyone else at the moment, but a fully fit Stoke squad, with how they played this season, I'd probably back them to be above, you know, the likes of West Brom, QPR. But yeah, once again, injuries to key players will probably see them finishing a little bit lower than that. Mike says, Cardiff, most underrated away support in the Championship. To be fair, I thought the Cardiff fans were fairly decent when they came to Deepdale this season, certainly in the second half of that game, and considering that it is quite a trek, to be fair, from Cardiff to Preston, isn't it? They came in some decent numbers, and yeah, there were some decent limbs in that second half, and they got a couple goals against us. Jordan says, Gustavo Hamer is the Championship Paul Scholes. I go one step further than that and say that Gustavo Hamer is both Paul Scholes and Roy Keane sort of rolled into one, particularly with his disciplinary record so far this season. I think he's on track to beat Ben Pearson's record at this rate with yellow cards. 8 bookings already in just 18 appearances for Hamer. I do enjoy watching him play very much though. Can certainly spread a pass and more than get stuck in off the ball as well, which I like to see. Ollie Carter says, Ryan Yates is one of the best players in the league but goes unnoticed because his role is to do the dirty work for the team. Now, while I don't agree that he's one of the best players in the league, I do agree that this season he's probably been one of the most improved players in the league, certainly to my knowledge as well, and the moments that I've seen of him and Nottingham Forest. Steve Cooper really seems to have that trust in him, as have quite a number of the previous Forest managers, to be fair, but in terms of his individual performances and developing as an all-round player, he seems to be going in the right direction now. There were a few moments where I was a little bit sort of unsure on him, but the statistics back him up in this regard in terms of having the season that he's currently having. He's won more tackles than anyone else in that Forest squad so far this season. Obviously, that being a big part of his game, getting stuck in. But also things on the ball and him actually fitting into this new system now. He's definitely heading in the right direction. M says, we're the biggest in the Championship, referring to Blackburn. I mean, I disagree. I want to get your guys' thoughts on this one in the comments down below though. Who for you is the biggest club in the Championship, and what are the sort of things we're judging these clubs by? Is it like fan base, trophies won, history, current success? A lot of factors to take into consideration with that one, but yeah, not Blackburn for me, sorry. Sam says, Keane, Lewis Potter and Greaves will be first team regulars for a top 6 club in the next 2 years. Now, are you referring to a top 6 Championship club or top 6 Premier League club? Because they're two obviously very different statements, but 2 fantastic youngsters, Greaves 21, Keane, Lewis Potter just 20 at the moment. I remember Hull coming up to the Championship and, you know, their fans were, you know, singing the praises of these 2 players, and generally they've been 2 of the players that have impressed me most from this Hull squad so far. Certainly think that in terms of a top 6 Championship club in the next 2 years, without a doubt. And pushing on from that for another couple of years, I wouldn't be at all surprised to see them playing their football in the Premier League. They're certainly at the age now where, you know, their development will just continue to snowball. Brothers makes an interesting point about Blackburn though. He says, we Blackburn actually have more squad depth than we and other people think. A different team every week and still fork out a result. Lots of youngsters that aren't half bad. I think that that last point there is the biggest contributing factor to all this, because I think that if we look into that Blackburn squad in terms of like experienced pros and games at this level and how much depth they have in that regard, it probably would be on the short side in terms of some other Championship clubs. But in terms of the youngsters that are currently coming up through and some of the youngsters that you picked up on loan, not just this year but in previous years as well, that does really stack up the squad, and I sort of agree with what you're saying there. I remember having Blackburn really low down in my predictions at the start of the season for a couple of reasons. Obviously the Armstrong deal and his departure was obviously playing on my mind. I didn't know that Brent Burton Diaz would go on to have the season he's just had, but squad depth was my biggest sort of sticking point with Blackburn coming into this season, and it's a testament to them for actually giving some of their youngsters those opportunities and the run out in the squad, you know, showing that clear progression from the youth academy to the first team. And I mean, that way you're only going to, you know, continue that cycle. The youngsters are going to see that as motivation to get through, and I think it is a fairly exciting time for Blackburn in that regard. It's something that I think my club Preston have really neglected over recent years, to be honest with you. So yeah, good point made there. Definitely some youngsters to watch out for in that Blackburn squad at the moment, aren't there? But guys, there we have it. That will now wrap it up for today's video. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I want to hear your other unpopular opinions in the comments down below. If we get enough of them, I might do a part 2 to this video today. But yeah, very interested to hear what you guys have got and as an unpopular opinion. Apart from that though guys, thank you very much for watching. If you did go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like and do stick around and subscribe for some regular championship content. Apart from that, thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.